Recording here. Hey, Stacey Powells. Well, that is slightly filtered.
Thank you, Jason Brown. We are slightly filtered, but only slightly because
How many words are we not allowed to say?
7.
And what are they?
They're, according to George Carlin, they are bleep, bleep, bleepler, bleep, 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 bleepler, bleep, and bleep, bleep, bleep.
Okay. All right. I will not say any of those bleeping, grolixing words.
Yes, do not say those, please. And please do not talk about how you beat me in foosball. Okay.
Oh, I will not talk about how I beat you. I'll just talk about how I whooped your... Oh, wait.
Okay, there goes the hand.
Frolic.
There goes the hand. We have an amazing guest today. I'm so excited that you're here. Christopher Platt, thank you so much for coming on. Wait, you live down here.
I live.
Right, I was going to say coming on down the mountain.
Thank you for that
live down here.
long trek down
two-minute drive.
Down Main
Dixon
Street.
Lane, whichever one you chose to come down. I know how rough it is.
Hey, didn't you just go up to the BristleCon? Were you just there not too long ago?
Yeah, my husband and I, Wills, who's been on your
He was our first guest.
first guest. Yeah, we went up there over the weekend. It's beautiful. We go up there in the summer when you want to escape the 100-degree heat. It's a nice place to go if you go early in the morning because you get there before the tourists get there and you pretty much have it to yourself. So
Well, if you can deal with 10,000 feet in altitude, isn't that how high it is?
Yeah.
It's 10,000 feet in altitude, yeah.
yeah,
This is the weekend to escape it, even though we don't know what month this is airing in. 107 down here.
yeah.
107. It's going to be hot down here. Oh, it's going to be 80-something in Mammoth. So that's hot. 8,000 feet, that
All
is
the
hot.
mammoth people will be complaining. Yeah.
Yes. They will be they will be complaining. And all as of this, I'm not sure if it's going to change by the time this airs, but as of right now, the Lakes Basin, you can't drive up there. You can,
Is it flooded?
no, it's the Forest Service, and they have to fix the electric lines, the bathrooms. They were all damaged
Yeah.
because of the horrible winter that we had.
Sure.
So you were down here most of the winter, right?
Yeah,
But you still got a lot of snow. I mean, you
Yeah.
would call me and say, I can't believe there's flooding going on down here.
Well, and you know what? Talking about the flooding, not to get too off topic, but we are really lucky that we had a June that wasn't triple digits like normal, because if not, we would have had that disaster that they were talking about.
Yeah.
We got really blessed with having 80 to 90-degree weather.
Yeah.
If not, if we would have had the high triple digits through the whole month of June like normal, this valley would be flooded.
There's still a lot of water out there, though.
There is, but I think that the staggering is really going to help, and I think that we won't have the major disaster they were talking about.
Sure.
Highway 6 getting cut off, and
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Everything. Now, you grew up here, right?
I grew up in Bishop. Yeah.
You grew up in Bishop. So when did you leave Bishop? Because I know that you ended up in New York somehow. So how did that all transpire?
yeah,
So I grew up in Bishop. I'm a kid of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And like many of us at that time, you spend your life here between two mountain ranges watching the planes go over, thinking, what's going on? Where are they going? So you kind of plan your exit, right? And so my exit was to get out of town and go have adventures. And so I left for school in the 80s. And then finally in the early 90s, I was out completely. And I lived in Santa Barbara and Seattle and went to grad school and became a librarian and got a job offer kind of just out of the hat from New York Public Library. And I thought, well, that's the other side of the country. Never been there. Let's go. And did that. Didn't look back. I thought I would go there for a few years. I ended up falling in love with New York City and stayed there off and on until 2018. So, about 25, 30 years there. So.
Well, New York City, what a huge difference between New York City and Bishop.
yeah.
I mean, I can go to New York if I have something to do, if I'm going to a meeting, and I'm go in, do the meeting, and come out. But I can't. It's just, for me, it's totally claustrophobic. Was it ever claustrophobic for you when you first got there? Or?
No, actually it was the opposite. I think growing up in Bishop, I felt the sparseness, right? Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows if you took that left turn where you weren't supposed to take, and you get home and your parents find out about it first. So living in the city for me was an exciting adventure, and it was actually comforting to be surrounded by people. You live in a giant apartment building and there's people who live 10 floors above you and 10 floors beneath you, and there's always this activity. And for a single person who's in his 20s, that was kind of comforting. And when you live in a city like New York that's so very dense and very old for a number of years, you learn that it's not just one big city. It's actually a lot of little neighborhoods, a lot of little bishops. Right? And you can walk 20 minutes and walk through 3 completely different neighborhoods. Start out in Chinatown, go through Little Italy, and then end up in Soho, which is very trendy or whatever. And, the restaurants change, the people change, the accents change. And it's part of that adventure. And you find the neighborhoods that you're comfortable in and that you go to. And we joked about it all the time. By the time we left New York City, we had our 3 restaurants that we went to all the time, the parts that city we would hang out in, and the rest of the city might just leave it to the tourists, So you learn to adapt, I think.
Now, that's where you met Wills, is in New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you guys meet? Is it a work thing or
No, dance clubs. We were young, foolish, like we all were in those days, right? It's since burned down, so now we can't ever break up.
What kind of dance?
And it's just this random dance club out in
music
pop, rock,
okay,
every kind of thing. Actually in Pennsylvania near the Delaware River, near Doylestown, it was just a place where a lot of different people of all, persuasions would come and just go because it was the only place to go on a Friday and Saturday night in that area. And it was just a lot of fun. And we knew a lot of our friends there. Some friends DJ'd there and what have you. And, that's where we met. And after a few years, at that point, I was living in New Jersey, and we hang out and lived together in this little artsy town called Lambertville on the Delaware River for a few years. And then we moved back to New York City. That was my second stint and his first stint in New York City. So again, we went in with our 5-year plan and ended up staying about 13 for all good reasons. But then this opportunity came up. We were ready to leave, and we wanted to go. We were spending a lot of time hiking and spending time in the country. Like, let's go live with some rear mountains for a while. So
I remember him describing seeing Bishop for the time. He's like, "That's where you live."
Right.
Yeah,
We're
coming down the grade. Yeah, yeah. That was his first time seeing Bishop, and he's like, "What?"
So, what was it like for you and Wills moving here, and the transition between the city life and him never living the Owens Valley life?
It's really been interesting, and it's it's been a blessing. I love that we chose to do this. I knew kind of what I was going back to. Bishop hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot since I left. There's a few more.
We've got Eastern Sierra Bank and
Eastern Sierra Pride.
Yeah, well, we got
Sierra Pride, and
then we've got Elevated and Looney Bean, those new buildings, grocery outlet.
Yeah, and some empty Kmart's,
some empty
and a few more stoplights.
Kmart. I miss Kmart. Never thought I'd say that, but I miss Kmart.
But no, it's been fun. As I said, in New York, we were spending a lot of time up in the Catskill Mountains and stuff, just being outdoorsy people. So, came here, we just slid right into that lifestyle. I had a job, which keeps me still up in Mono County, running the library system, which has been really fun because it's a great way to meet people. And then Will's just dove right in. He's a people person, and he likes to do things where it will cause him to meet other people. So he volunteered a lot. He volunteered for Volunteer Eastern Sierra Pride, and just built up a network. And now he works for the Sierra Club. So it's great. I think if I wanted to leave now, he would be the one who say no. He's really fallen in love with this place. Yeah.
So I have to ask you, so you left New York in 2018.
Right.
You were there for 25 years. So you were there 9/11.
Yeah, that was
So what was that like for you guys?
So at that time, I worked for a company where we worked with libraries across the country that were building new buildings, and I got to help them choose all the books. And so we had a facility just across the river in New Jersey, and that's where I was working that day with my colleagues and a number of the salespeople who worked for that
Did you see
company.
the skyline?
If you went outside, you could and stood on the roof. We weren't that close, but a number of the people who worked for that company were flying in and out for sales meetings that week. You know, when I do remember, everyone remembers that day, right? It's like December 7th, 1941. You remember where you were and how you felt and coming into work and hearing the news and wondering if it's true. And then of course it was true. And then everyone, you know, clamoring around a TV. And of course we had friends and colleagues in the city that you're worried about, and your colleagues who are flying in and out of Newark airports and the other airports that you're worried about. And, you know, cell service wasn't what it was in those days, what it is today. So it was really hard for people to get in contact, which I think was the most traumatic thing. One of my colleagues at work who worked across the desk from me, her son worked in one of the towers, and she spent the entire day glued to her phone because she wouldn't go anywhere because she knew that he would call her. And that was a really traumatic. He ended up getting to call her when he got out of the tower. And like many of the people who did get out, they had to walk. Nothing was working, and you just walked until you reached safety or someone who could take you home or all the way home. And he walked for hours until he got up to Midtown and finally got access to a phone to call his mom. That's one of a million stories like that during the day. And our story, you know, I didn't see it happen personally. So my story's easier than a lot of other people who were right there. I know people who were running, you know, as the towers were falling, from things falling in the sky that you'd never want to run from this stuff. So, you know, it's a challenge.
This episode of This Crazy Life is also sponsored by Jaspin IT Consultants. Jaspin is trusted by financial firms, hospitals, and small businesses with over 30 years of experience, specializing in computer repair for PC and Mac, managed IT solutions, managed antivirus, servers, virtualization, networking, surveillance solutions, VoIP phone service, and digital signage. We are building a reputation for creating a positive return on investments for our clients. If you are serious about your business success, our team of professionals can get you there. Strategic thinking, personal attention, competitive prices, real-world results. Discover the Jaspin difference. Located at 249 North Main Street in Bishop, California, 760-872-2797, or on the web at www.jaspin.com.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. But still, the community of the tri-state area, that's it, is it? The tri-state, New York, New Jersey,
in Connecticut.
Connecticut. I mean, the community that was completely built after that whole tragedy happened was pretty incredible. I mean, the stories that we heard coming out of there. But I'm so sorry that, you know, even 6 degrees of separation. I mean, you're all part of all that energy that happened that day.
Yeah, and you're right. It did show resiliency in community, and that people stepping up to help. That it just happened almost automatically, and that reinforces your belief in humanity, right? If something, God forbid, something were to happen here, you know, I would trust that, you know, we would step up to help, but we wouldn't not be able to. So
yeah, exactly. Let's just switch gears a little bit here.
Okay.
I know I don't want to go. I just had to ask because you were there, and that was just like I said, it's a day that we will not forget.
Right.
You know what happened. So you've got a little cheat sheet there. Is that a cheat
I
sheet,
always
or?
bring cheat sheets.
I want to know what you're reading. I know that I'm not sure when this is going to air, but you are going to be giving a great talk at the Eastern Sierra Book Festival.
Alongside you.
No.
You're going to be there, right?
Yeah, but you're doing like the. I'm talking about book. You're talking about books in general. So what do you? And I love your posts on Facebook. There was one book I wrote it down. The woman who had to marry 3 kids right away, and she left her kids. You just posted it recently. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I see the cover. It's a woman sitting in a car.
Sure, it's a book that came out. It's a first novel that came out a couple years ago from Eleanor Ann Struther. And now the title is blanking.
I could see the excuse or the it was like it's not excuse.
It's not an inconvenient excuse, but it's something like
something
that.
like that.
But basically, it's a first novel about a young woman. This is immediately post World War I, when so many of the men had died, including her brother. From an aristocratic family, he was going to inherit everything, and now, the family needs another
That's
male.
right. They needed an heir. And she was forced to marry and had 3 children.
Yeah, she basically married into a loveless relationship and had 3 children, and things happen in that relationship. And her relationship with children, because she had postpartum depression, which in that time was just called craziness. You're feeling the blues. You'll get over it. Yeah. And the story actually draws out for a few decades. She ends up selling one of her sons to her sister for 500 pounds. Just take him off my hands. I don't need him. And at the end of the book, you realize she puts in a little coda that it was based on her own family story. Her father had been sold by his mother to his aunt. Wow. And created this huge rift in the family. And he was so bitter that when he died, he's like, here, you get to have all this documentation, write a book about it. And that's what this book is. It's fascinating. Great book club read. I think there's a lot to unpack there. I'll find out the title and post it again.
It's on his Facebook page, Christopher Platt, Facebook. It's on there. So what are you doing these days? What else are you doing?
So right now, at the time we're recording, we're in the middle of summer reading up in Mammoth and Mono County. We have 7 locations up there. And so there's summer reading for kids all around the county.
Yeah.
Read for prizes. But also we've got this year, we're doing a new middle school book discussion as part of it, reading Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn, which is a terrific kind of 5th, 6th grade read. Around that, and then a bunch of activities around that. And then we have book clubs going, both virtual and physical, around the county. Those are always fun, including one that just started up in Benton. It started with 2 people, and now it's got 6. So I'm like, yay, that's most of Benton joining a book club.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's population.
That's great. No, it's awesome. And what I love about it, and part of what I think my role is here, and Stacey, you were kind enough to join us on our Oxygen Star podcast for an episode, is to talk about books and exhibit the behavior that it's okay to ask people, what are you reading? You can stand in line in Bonds and talk about, did you hit the ski runs this morning, or how are the trails, or what have you? But you can also say, hey, what are you reading? And when I ask that question, and I get asked that question all the time, I more often than not get an answer that says, I'm reading this. So that tells me that the people that we encounter on a daily basis are all engaged with this act of reading, whether reading a magazine or a book or listening to an audiobook or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's so important because reading is behavior that is, you're investing in yourself, mm-hmm. and it gives you space and time to just kind of process all the other mishigas that we deal with during the day. So for the Eastern Sierra Book Festival, thank you. Jennifer Crittenden is always kind enough to ask me to kind of come and tell the attendees what I've been reading lately and what I'm looking forward to read. So I have a list, and by the time this comes out, I think it'll already be announced. You can go to the library website and see it. But I have a list of titles that are Christopher's choices of what I've been reading during 2023, and then the titles I'm excited about that are coming out during the fall publishing season, which basically starts in August, and all the big hitters come out in fall so that people buy Christmas gifts. And
is that how it works?
Pretty much. But I'll tell you 2 titles I'm excited about.
Okay.
One is fiction. This is called Whale Fall by Daniel Kraus. Daniel Kraus has been around for a number of years. He writes a lot of young adult books. This is actually an adult book, but he's also fascinated and very knowledgeable about the ocean and its creatures. And he actually worked with Guillermo del Toro to create Shape of Water, that movie that came out a long time ago. Well, in this book, a young man who is grieving the death of his father. His father dies in an ocean accident and drowns and is lost at sea off the coast of Monterey. And this young man is kind of trying to deal with that grief and has problems with his family and what have you. He scuba dives out off Monterey coast in an attempt to find his father's body, basically, which basically tells you a little bit about his mindset, But this is what happens. He gets a little too far out. He encounters a giant squid at the kind of the surface of the ocean, which doesn't happen, right? Giant squids don't come up there unless something is happening. And he realizes that there's something happening underneath. If the squid is up here, he's probably being pursued by the giant squids only real predator, which are sperm whales. And sure enough, a sperm whale is shooting up from underneath to eat that squid, and he's caught in the middle. The unthinkable happens. He gets swallowed into the belly of a whale, and he has an hour's worth of oxygen to figure out, can I get out? Now, the reason I talk on this book is two reasons. One, I am incredibly afraid of the deep. I have a hard time diving.
In Monterey, there's that.
It's the shell.
The shell
Yeah.
drops
right
off.
there.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he does. He goes too far out, and that's when that comes up.
I thought you were going to say that he was swimming around Monterey Bay and found the body of John Denver. That's where John Denver died.
That's probably number 2, the sequel. But no, it's just a fascinating book. And then Daniel Krauss himself is so knowledgeable about ocean creatures that he uses science to drive this plot, and so it's not totally out of the realm of possibility what this young man is trying to do to escape the whale. It's all very anatomically correct. Whale have teeth, but they don't use them to chew. So something's got to chew you. And it turns out in a sperm whale, it's the stomach that does the chewing. And there are 4 stomachs. So this is just a teaser. For me, I don't read horror books, but for me, it was a horror book.
What's it called again?
It's called Whale Fall by Daniel Krauss.
Whale Fall.
Yeah, I read it in broad daylight over lunch hours. I would not read this in bed before falling asleep.
How fast of a reader are you?
I read pretty quickly. And some of these books, the books that I tend to read, you can read them in a weekend.
Okay.
So the other book that I'll tell you about that I think a lot of your viewers might like is a new book coming out in September called Disney on the Mountain. You may already know this story, but when Walt Disney opened up Disneyland in the mid-50s and he was planning Disney World in Orlando, his last passion project was going to be to open a ski resort in the California mountains.
Actually, I didn't know that.
And that's up here in the
Mineral King down near Sequoia.
Yeah, that's it.
And so, Disney appreciated the outdoors. He was given awards by the Sierra Club and other organizations for, his outdoor education documentaries in the 50s and that kind of thing. But skiing was becoming more popular. And so he was scouting places to go. They looked up near Tahoe. At one point, he made an offer to buy Mammoth Mountain, lock, stock, and barrel. And I guess McCoy turned him down. And he ended up at Mineral King Valley, a little bit further south of here. I'm pointing at that south. But by this time it was the 60s and conservationism had really taken root. And the Sierra Club had kind of turned from the sleepy organization into an activist organization. And so this book is a fascinating story about how, with the best of intentions of his time, he was going to open a ski resort down there. He was going to camouflage the ski lifts. He was going to try and put the town out of sight so it wouldn't spoil the view. And he was going to make you park outside of the area and take a monorail in. But it was also adjacent to Sequoia National Park. And so, long story short, the conservationists won out. The resort did not get built. In fact, Mineral King then became part of Sequoia National Park as it is today. But the story is fascinating. And like you, Stacey, I didn't know. I had no idea. He was going to put animatronic singing bears in Mineral King Valley as part of the ski resort,
I have watched the documentary on the Disney doing.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating.
What, is a documentary about this?
Well, you can watch them on YouTube. There's all kinds of different little documentaries. Not about this. The book is totally different. I'm going to read the book. This sounds really exciting because I want to see how it compares to the documentary. Everything that you said about what he wanted to do is true. But the Sierra groups were really concerned because of what was happening in Anaheim at the time.
Anaheim,
are we really going to hide the town? They knew that it would explode beyond Disney's control.
And they had recently seen what happened when bigger roads were built into Yosemite.
Right.
And Yosemite was already experiencing overcrowding and pollution, and they did not want that to happen to Sequoia. So, but that's a book comes out in September, Disney on the Mountain by Greg Glasgow. Keep an eye out for it.
Okay. And then are you still doing your Oxygen Deprived podcast?
Oxygen Starved podcast? Yeah, we're on
Starved.
We're on summer break. But yeah, we're going into our 4th year. We're hitting up to 90 episodes. So.
Oh my gosh. Do you record once a month? Is that your...
We record a couple of times a month.
Okay.
When the roads are open. This last winter, we had a pretty forced hiatus when we couldn't get anywhere. But yeah, a couple times a month. And that podcast is mostly to talk about books because my colleague, Dr. Stacey Adler, and our producer, Doug Thornburg, we're book people. And again, it's just kind of give a vehicle to, give people an idea of some new titles they might be interested in and also just how to chat about them. but we also frame it on adventure books and conversation. So we talk a little bit, and adventure is kind of like a little bit something unique around the Eastern Sierra, either a trail we've hiked or have we gone kayaking or a historical marker or something like that kind of hooks you in. Then we talk about books. And then the final thing, as you experienced, Stacey, is our conversation with someone from the East Side who contributes uniquely to our live, work, lifestyle. And we have no end to people we can invite on, and all of them bring books that they suggest. Some of them write books. And it's just a delight. It's kind of like an oral history of, similar to what you guys do, a history of who lives here, right? That, decades from now, people can go back and, they want to hear what Tim Alpers actually sounded like. He was one of our first guests, and or you or anybody else. So I just love it, and I get to meet people from around the area.
Have you by chance met Brent, who owns Cerro Gordo? Because he
Not yet.
owned a publishing company.
Cerro Gordo?
Yeah, the ghost town. He bought the ghost town out there. I think he ended up buying out his partners and stuff. He's rebuilding the Americano Hotel.
Oh, is he?
But he was, he was a publisher.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think that
You have to
that would
connect
be
it.
an interesting podcast if you guys got into talking about his previous.
Sure, or talking about Cerro Gordo. A lot of
yeah.
people would find that fascinating. My dad had stories of Cerro Gordo. Send me his contact information.
I will.
Reach out.
He was just all in the books too. So
Awesome.
I mean, obviously, publisher.
Have you read the Dr. Nellie book?
No.
Nellie was the first female doctor here
Right.
back in the 1800s, and her 6 times great granddaughter is my stepdaughter.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of my colleagues have written it. We've got the book in all the libraries. It's pretty popular. It's great when you get those kind of stories. Right?
Absolutely. And you know what I think? I don't know if it's just me. I think books have making a comeback. I mean, there was a while there that people have said, the actual books.
Yeah, not.
And actually, just reading is making a comeback. I think humanity is overwhelmed with social media and everything, and they're just turning it off. And just, if I get into a book, I don't have to deal with any of the news and anything that's going on the planet. And at least with my people that I know, everybody's reading something right now because they don't want to deal with what's going on planet Earth at this moment.
No, who does? But let me ask you a question: Are you a book person or a Kindle person?
I'm both.
Both.
Right? So I'm agnostic. I'm a librarian. I'm a book person since I was this big, reading Reader's Digest condensed books that my family got on subscription. And I read every book in the Bishop Library before I graduated high school. So I will ingest from whatever way I can.
What do you prefer?
It depends on where I am. If I'm on my lunch hour, I often just prefer to have it on my iPad. It's easy to carry around. I can go up to the Lakes Basin and sit by Horseshoe Lake and read a book, that kind of thing. But, if I'm at home and I'm sitting in my chair and I got my tea or, whatever, I kind of like the weight of a book.
It's environmental.
I tend to get it on both so that I can do the same thing when I'm sitting there having my cup of tea. I can read my book, but then I can also grab it on my Kindle, read it on my phone, read it on my computer, read it on my tablet.
So let me ask you, do you read more nonfiction on your tablet and fiction? And
I read more fiction probably than anything. I really want to escape reality.
Yeah. So I escape in a variety of ways too. I read a lot of nonfiction on my tablet because I've become one of those persons who will also keep Wikipedia or something else open, and I will fact check or just do my own kind of research. This Disney thing, I'm going, where's Mineral King? I go and I look up a map and that's where it is.
Well, I guess I like history books too more than if I'm going to go to nonfiction, I'll probably read more of the history of an area.
Yeah.
That I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Are we out of time?
These things always
go so fast. Christopher Platt, thank you so much for being a guest on Slightly Filtered. Really appreciate you. I keep wanting to say coming down the mountain, but you live down the mountain. So thank you.
He goes up when he needs to work.
I'm going out after this. Thank you. I appreciate it.